from the past.
Please listen carefully.
CoCo.
Welcome to the CoCo Crew Podcast. A delicious adventure into the world of retro computing news and information. Featuring the Tandy Color Computer.
Hey, you got your CoCo 3 yet?
CoCo.
All right. Well, CoCo Cruisers, CoCo Maniacs, you're listening to episode 76 of the CoCo Crew Podcast. I, of course, am John Linville. I'm joined by my co-hosts. We have Mr. Neil Blanchard. Hello, Neil.
Hello, John.
Mr. Mike Rowan. Hello, Mike.
Greetings, CoCo Cruisers.
And, of course, Mr. Boise Pete. Hello, Boise.
Hello, everybody.
Welcome. Let's see what is going on. Let's see, time marches on. Tandy Assembly is essentially here by the time you can hear this podcast. Very good. We're going to call it away since we're now looking forward to the next one. Let's see, CoCo Fest is, because of weakness and COVID or whatever. CoCo Fest is about a month away, and the next CoCo Fest is only another 6 months after that. So, what's everyone been up to? Anyone working on anything interesting or CoCo? I've been working on my presentation for Tandy Assembly.
So have I. Yeah, same
well
here.
done
That's
now.
a good thing.
Yeah.
Very good. Yeah, I also was working on a little project. I'm not sure I want to do much to announce it, but it's a project that involves some hacking of the basic interpreter a bit and maybe some other hardware. It'll be cool when I announce it. Anyone else? Neil, you got any woodworking? Are you killing any trees for the benefit of the CoCo community?
I just did finish another Pine Gamester.
Oh, yeah? Very good.
And all the parts came in for the new GMC game, so I'm going to be ready to start assembling them. Everything is here.
Awesome.
Cool.
Very good. Got the right parts. Got them sourced in. That's good.
Yep.
Let's see. Cool.
Those oscillators, it was the hardest thing to get.
Yeah. One of the more pricey parts, but and it can be a little hard to find. I don't know. I like the little short ones, but I'm not sure it was the best choice from sourcing the parts or whatever. They're cool though. Let's see. How about acquisitions? Anybody pick up anything cool recently? Well, I'm checking my eBay list. A few things here and there. I did pick up a DVD collection of scans of Dragon User Magazine.
Ooh.
Kind of like the UK equivalent of the Rainbow. Not a bad magazine. Paper copies here. It's only a few bucks. I thought that was worthwhile. I did pick up one of those MSX hardware boards from John Whitworth. Haven't had a chance to do much with it, but it finally arrived yesterday, so should be cool to play with.
Yeah, that's cool.
Anyway, well, I think the main thing, we're keeping busy and getting ready for assembly. That's going to be a cool weekend, I'm sure. I'm going to have a good time had by all, I'm sure. Hopefully that's enough to get us started. So why don't we take a short break, and then we'll be back with some announcements.
Great moments in history.
Mr. Watson, come here. I want to see you.
Mr. Bell, it worked. I heard every word.
Duh, you were supposed to. I called you in here because I just received the newest Radio Shack flyer in today's mail.
Look for your Radio Shack flyer in this week's mail. Save 25 to 50% on select items throughout the store. Mr. Bell, where are you going?
Why, to Radio Shack, of course, for big savings.
What about the telephone?
If anyone calls, take a message.
Radio Shack, America's technology store.
Active Software is proud to present Games Tape 1. Find out what critics are calling the best collection of Dragon games available. 8 fantastic full-length programs on one cassette. That's an incredible 200K. Each game features spectacular color graphics and sound. You get Wipeout, Interplanetary Trader, Wampus Mansion, Hilo, Atom Hunt, Snail Pace, Execution, and Air Assault. All of these great games for just £6.25, and that includes postage. Plus, our unconditional replacement guarantee. If your cassette fails to load, just return it to Active Software for an immediate replacement. All orders are dispatched within 48 hours of receipt. Order your copy of Games Tape 1 today. Active Software, 117 Eichnield Street, Birmingham. Active Software, second to none.
Okay, CoCo Cruisers, welcome back. Now it's time for some announcements. You are, of course, listening to the CoCo Crew Podcast. We are available on Twitter with a Twitter handle of @CoCo Crew Podcast. That's @CoCoCrewPodcast. Feel free to send us a tweet. We might tweet back at you. We're, of course, available on Facebook with a Facebook group called the CoCo Crew Podcast, 4 separate words. So if you're on the Book of Faces, join the group, chat with us, maybe get some earlier and interesting news or information, or just keep up with the show. Be a great thing. We are a podcast. So, of course, we have an RSS feed available at cococrew.org. And if you're not that independent, you can, of course, find us through Apple Podcasts, through Google Play. And if you prefer to stream the podcast, we're available for streaming on Spotify, on Stitcher, and through TuneIn. We have been taking, for some time, our audio podcast and converting it to a simple video version, making it available on YouTube. So if you prefer to get to your podcast through YouTube, you can do so. Big advantage there, especially for user listeners that are maybe have hearing difficulties or who are not native English speakers. YouTube does a pretty good job with subtitles. It can be helpful so that you can read as well as listen, which might help your understanding of the show. We are a member of the Throwback Network, a retro-themed podcast, 80s culture and the like, or maybe some geek culture. So if you are caught up on the CoCo Crew Podcast and looking for something else to occupy your listening time, we recommend that you check out the Throwback Network. We're also a member of, or listed on, the Game by Game Podcast Information Hub. So again, if you are caught up on the CoCo Crew Podcast, looking for something else, we recommend that you check out the Game by Game Podcast Information Hub, where you will find listings of various technology-themed and gaming-related podcasts centered around the 80s and 90s computer games and the like. The audio for the CoCo Crew Podcast is hosted by Cyber Ears. If you have a need to host audio on the internet, whether it be your own podcast or something for your club or church or place of worship or anywhere else you might need to publish audio on the internet, we recommend that you check out Cyber Ears, where you will get your audio on your terms. And if you'd like to reach out to the host of the CoCo Crew Podcast via email, we have some addresses set up for you. The first 3 will reach all of the hosts. These are show, SHOW, at cococrew.org. That's @COCOCREW.org. We also have podcast, PODCAST, at cococrew.org. and FEED, BACK, at CoCo.org. Any of those will reach all of the hosts, and feel free to use them, whether you want to tip us off, praise us, complain about us, whatever you got, feel free to send it. If for some reason you only want to reach one of the hosts, we have some addresses set up for that as well. I'm available as John, JOHN, at CoCocrew.org. Neil is available as Neil, NEIL, at CoCocrew.org. Mike is available as Mike, MIKE, at cococrew.org, and Boise is available as Boise, BOISY, at cococrew.org. Some event announcements coming up in the real world, coming up in October 8th through the 10th, 2021. We've got Bcf East, Vintage Computer Festival East being held in Wall, New Jersey at the Employee Science Center. Now scheduled for 8th, 9th, and 10th. There will be an in-person show. This year the themes of the show are IBM 5150 PC and Legacy. There's probably more going on than that, but that's what the website says. So if you're in the northeast part of the United States, kind of near New York, we recommend that you make your way to Wall, New Jersey, October 8th through 10th for Vintage Computer Festival East. Pretty good show. Coming up November 5th through the 7th, being held at the Wilson Center in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, the Midwest Gaming Classic. Classic is a trade show featuring 150,000 plus square feet of retro and modern home video game consoles, pinball machines, arcade video games, tabletop RPGs, computers, tabletop board games, crane games, collections, air hockey, and that's just the start. This has been highly recommended by our friend Ron Klein. So if you're in the northern part of the Midwest United States or somewhere nearby and you can get there, I recommend that you check out the Midwest Gaming Classic. That same weekend, November 6th and 7th of 2021, at the Holleran Elk Grove Village annual last Chicago CoCo Fest. This will be, the event has been put on by Glenside for almost 30 years. The event had brought all the hosts together originally. Hopefully they'll have a good event. I guess it remains to be seen given the current COVID restrictions and just the way life is these days. Wrapping around to 2022 for April 29th through 30th and May 1st of 2022, we've got a pre-announced Bcf East 2022. That'll, of course, be in Wall, New Jersey. Hopefully that'll be a good show. Hopefully things will be calming back down closer to normal by next spring. We'll have to wait and see. Also, tentatively scheduled for May 14th and 15th of 2022. I guess it'll be the 30th annual last Chicago CoCo Fest. Also to be held at the Holiday Inn in Elk Grove Village, Illinois. Coming in July 15th through 17th, 2022, we've got the Southern Fried Gaming Expo, which will again be held at the Marriott Renaissance Waverly in Atlanta, Georgia. Hopefully some of those events are going to start coming true, start getting people back together in real life. That'll be good for all of us, I think. All right. Well, those are our announcements. We'll be back with some news.
Howard Medical Computers.
Save $100 on Magnavox monitors. Magnavox CM8505 RGB analog, only $198. Zenith 123A 12-inch green screen, just $67.50. Zenith 122A 12-inch amber screen, just $88. Stop by our showroom for other special deals on controllers, memory, disk drive, software, and more. Open 6 to 5 Monday through Friday, 10 to 3 Saturdays. Located at 1690 North Elston in Chicago, Illinois.
Howard Medical Computers.
All right, welcome back, CoCo Maniacs and CoCo Cruisers. Now it's time for the news.
First one I have is from friend of the show, Jim Gary, and he's got a new game called Spacebar Bandit. This looks like it's from an Australian CoCo magazine. Shows Volume 1, Number 4, 1984. It's a slot machine casino type game. Graphics look pretty cool on it too. It's for the MC10, pretty nice.
If only the money were real.
Yeah,
it's pretty cool.
Jim doesn't disappoint.
Oh no, every month you got something new. All right, next news article is from Al Williams at Hageday. Solder bridges, aid for desoldering. Now this is a really cool video. I've actually done this trick. You actually make like a bridge with your soldering iron, and you just keep working it, and eventually the part on the other side will fall through. That's a really cool technique.
Yeah, that's pretty slick.
Video. Yeah, handy if you don't have a desoldering station. So you can check that one out. It'll be in the show notes. The next one is from George Droge at Vintage is the New Old. Some new reading material for you. An extensive book about sound chips, which is set to be released by Fusion Retro Book. There is a pre-order, and the book is called The Little Book of Sound Chips, Volume 1. So that would be a great read. You gonna pick up a copy, John?
I don't know if I will or not, but I thought some people might be interested.
I thought, yeah, you might be.
I'm waiting for Volume 2.
Revision.
Cover some more chips, other than the Commodore 64 chips.
Yeah. All right, the next news article here is from Melody and April Griffiths. I don't know how you found this one, John. This is pretty cool, but it's the Print Shop Club. It's really cool. It's a website. It actually boots up the print shop. Looks to be on an Apple II for the graphics. And it'll actually create a PDF of the output. You can download it right to your computer, to a modern machine. That is really cool.
Interesting piece of kit there. Like you said, we've been talking about the print shop a bit.
Yep.
So try it out.
Yeah, it's neat. And there's even all the graphic discs, too. You can pick all the different data graphic discs. It looks like the whole collection here. That's wild.
Yeah. All the clip art.
Yeah. Such an iconic program back in the day, and now it's just sitting on a web browser.
It's funny. This one's written up from Paulo at Vintage is the New Old. The Making of Nox Archaist, a new book telling the story of how the Apple II game was created. I think we've mentioned this a little bit. The Apple II game, it's inspired by Ultima. It's a tile-based role-playing game developed in modern times, on the Apple II by, geeks like us, so to speak. And it's an interesting project, pretty big project. And they did eventually release Mac and PC as well as the Apple. They did a lot of cool stuff there. I think there's a language developed to help do some of the scripting and stuff for tying the game together. So anyway, it's an Apple II story, so it's not a CoCo book for that cool stuff and then write about it. But if you like retro stories, this will be a good one. So check it out. So you can pre-order it for about $22. Probably worth reading. So check it out. Let's see, moving on from Michael Dornbo, Doornbos. Just for fun, the 100-door problem on several different systems. What's the 100-door problem? It's just for fun problem in beginning, quote-unquote, beginning math and computer courses. The idea is simple. There are 100 closed doors in a row. You walk past the doors 100 times. First time, you visit every door. If the door's closed, open it. If it's open, close it. Second time, you only visit every second door, and you either open or close it based on whether it's already open or closed. The third time, you do every third door, etc., etc. And you keep going to the door over and over again until there's only the last door, then which doors are open. And so it's a mental exercise, and he's got the program implemented in BASIC for the VIC-20, Commodore, Atari. He's got a version for the Color Maximite, which is kind of funny. There's a CoCo connection there, sort of. Anyway, it's a programming problem. You might enjoy it, little reading about it, messing with it, whatever. It's kind of something you could do on your retro computer. So enjoy it, have some fun, or not. It's all up to you. So the next one's a blog post from, it's on swharden.com, which seems to belong to Scott W. Harden. I'm not sure who that person is, but it's on representing images in memory. Quick reference for programmers interested in working with image data in memory. And so he goes through and talks about some of the ways that images, pictures, can be represented in essentially in bitmapped form, the way different pixel formats, different representations of color, that sort of thing. It doesn't really apply to the CoCo except in the most general sense, but it might be interesting. So if you're wondering how some of the stuff is done, there's some comparison of different possibilities. And again, take a chance, take a look at it, wrap your brain around it. It can only make you smarter, right? See, the next one here, at first I thought it was some weird foreign name, kind of Konami, whatever. I think it's just Konami Man at msx.org. Anyway, don't know who the person is, but apparently he likes Konami, who of course made some arcade games and such back in the day. But he talks about a project where people have talked about how to add USB-based keyboards to your retro computers, to replace failing keyboards and that sort of thing. He kind of takes the idea and turns it upside down and talks about using in this case, your MSX as a USB keyboard plugged into another computer. That could be a CoCo project. You just have to figure it out, right? So included there, something you can think about. Maybe you could do that show up at CoCo Fest with your CoCo as a USB keyboard project. I think that'd be pretty cool.
Our next one is from Mr. Jim Gary. It is Euchre for 2 by Victor Rebob. This is for the MC-10. It looks like it was ported originally for the Univac 1106, which is kind of cool. It's the card game Euchre. Now, we usually don't get political on the show, but just be warned, it does mention Trump. Thanks for that, Jim. Our next one is from Adafruit, and this is a little video of Perf board resizing. This is a pretty quick video to watch, but it just really explains to you if you've got a project where you've got a case, for example, that won't fit the a standard size. There's all kinds of different sizes of perf board, or maybe you've got a big chunk of perf board and you only need a little one for your project. This shows you very easily how you can score just about any perf board, whether it's double-sided or single-sided, very easily with a knife. You can snap it to whatever size you need. So handy tip for working with perf board. Definitely check that video out. Nice one from Adafruit. All right, this one is a cool story. This is from Michael Can at PCMag.com. You can run Doom on a chip from a $15 IKEA smart lamp. This $15 lamp has an ARM processor in it with like 12K of memory. So this is how far we've come. A lamp is more powerful than a color computer.
Yeah.
So he added, he had to add a display and a keyboard and things like that, but basically pulled apart the lamp and used the processor to run, it's only enough memory to run the first level of Doom, but it's still pretty fun read, the fact that you could just pull parts out of a lamp and turn it into Doom. That's something else. You definitely want to check that one out.
And if it runs Doom, it could run Farfall.
There you go. Right, not a CoCo project, but it could be. Yeah. Probably run Cocoa Pie on it, yeah. This next one is from Timothy Holleran. Booting up OS 9 ease of use on what I believe is the only USB-A powered CoCo 3. So I believe this is on Facebook. In the Facebook group. So what he's done is he's replaced the power supply on the CoCo 3 with a USB-powered CoCo 3, and he's booted up OS 9 on it. And he also mentioned that he has one that's not fully tested yet on a CoCo 2. And I believe we're going to hear a little bit more about that power supply later in the show.
That's right.
But yeah, that's pretty cool. Definitely make your CoCo a little bit lighter, not having that big transformer in it.
The next news item is The Wizardry and Ultima sequels by Jimmy Maher. This is a blog post, or I guess an article, on some role-playing games of the early 80s. I'm not a gamer, so I don't really know much about this. John, can you shed some light on it?
Wizardry and Ultima are pretty well-known series of role-playing games, and it kind of set you kind of defined the genre. I'm sure it inspired games. I'm not sure, Neil probably knows better than I do, which CoCo games took inspiration from these games. I'm sure there are some. So they were ported to a lot of platforms. Unfortunately, I don't think they were directly ported to the CoCo. These were the games done by Richard Garriott, or a.k.a. Lord British. I think the reason why this one makes the cut is a little in the middle of the text here. There's a story about Garriott when he was in school. Apparently, he got dinged on some of the assignments for his professor because he was not embracing the power of the 6809. and instead was basically turning in 6502 code for his 6809 assignments. And so I thought it was funny. So that's really why I included this story.
Very nice. Well, that certainly makes it worth the read.
Yeah. No.
The next news item is bringing a ruined Game Boy card back to life with tons of soldering by Lewin Day at Hageday. So this is a Hageday article. I admire this type of work. It looks like he took an old Game Boy cartridge, which this could easily be a CoCo cartridge, right? That had some corrosion on it. The traces looks like the traces were completely wiped out in certain sections of the cartridge edge connector. And very patiently, I'm sure, found where the original connection was on the board and used small copper wires to solder it onto the edge connector. And in effect, got a non-working cartridge working again. Kudos to this guy for doing that.
Yeah, that's a lot of
Definitely
work.
meticulous repair work. But,
Yeah.
But it's a way to do it.
Yeah, and you know, it's interesting, right? The question is it worth it? Because obviously it depends on the rarity of the cartridge, and I guess that's the biggest thing. But apparently he felt it was worth his time, and he learned something, so that's good. Glad to see that.
Hometown Radio Shack.
Hi, I'm really enjoying playing games at the arcade. I was wondering if you had any arcade-style game controllers for the color computer.
Well, we do sell joysticks for the CoCo.
Can you describe them?
Well, they're plastic, fit in the palm of your hand. They have a plastic joystick, and there's a small push button on the side.
Do they have spring return?
Well, we also sell the deluxe joystick. It has spring return.
What's it like?
Well, they're plastic, fit in the palm of your hand. They have a plastic joystick, and there's a little push button on the side and one on the top. But we do sell some other brands, too.
What are they like?
Well, they're plastic, fit in the palm of your hand. They have plastic joystick, and there's a little push buttons on the sides.
Why play games with fragile, outdated plastic controllers? Move up to professional arcade quality with the Gamester. The Gamester is the ultimate 2-button joystick controller for your color computer, Dragon or Tandy 1000. It features a genuine arcade quality joystick with 2 large arcade quality cherry switch buttons on a single surface. It sits comfortably on your lap or on your desk. Select custom furniture quality paint or stain finishes. Choose a right or left-handed configuration. And now you have the option of light up LED buttons. Find out why so many others are delighted with the Gamester. To build yours, simply reach out to Neil Blanchard by email. Neil at CoCoCrew.org. That's NEIL at CoCoCrew.org. For true arcade action, it's the Gamester.
Since 1994, Cloud9 has made cool stuff for your color computer. Now Cloud9 is proud to announce the 2MB Triad Plus memory expansion board. The Triad Plus works in 2 ways. Purchase just the Triad Plus board to expand your Color Computer 3 from 128K to 512K of RAM. Or add the new Protector Plus MMU to access the full 2 megabytes of static RAM aboard the Triad Plus. And the Protector Plus MMU utilizes full buffering to protect your CPU. Unlike previous 2 megabyte memory expansions for the CoCo 3, the Triad Plus operates seamlessly without the need for special patches, configuration, or workarounds. Games like Donkey Kong Remix and Sierra Adventure games simply work without hassle. And the Triad Plus will reduce your CoCo's power consumption and heat generation. The Triad Plus and Protector Plus MMU, only from the innovative engineering of Cloud9. Cool stuff for your color computer. Visit cloud9tech.com for details.
The next news item is 0 Hour Blog, Chapter 10, Machine Press and Slot Machine Levels by Mr. Nick Marentes. This is Nick's blog on his continuing impressive CoCo 3 game called 0 Hour. I believe he has a video preview on this page as well. It looks quite novel.
Yeah.
The next news item is a library of 6809 assembly routines for the CoCo 3 by Mr. Paul Thayer. This is a link to a GitHub page where it appears that Paul has shared some work that he is doing on this library. I haven't looked at it in detail, but it looks like he started it 16 months ago and has done some commits to it as of 9 days ago. So I'm assuming this came from Paul's efforts in writing the various games he did. I believe Paul was tutored by Simon to learn 6809 assembly language, and this is the tree bearing fruit. So good work on this, Paul. I like to see this kind of stuff. being shared.
Yeah, this is really cool. It's got little routines for a lot of things you would do for any game. So I hope he continues to build it out. And, just looking at the code, of course, would be real educational if you're picking up assembly programming.
Yep. This is good stuff. Thank you for Paul for sharing.
Yeah, thanks for that, Paul.
Very nice.
The next news item is complete walkthrough of Sunrise over the Celamine. I hope I'm saying that right, by a good friend of the show, Mr. M. Gary. This is a walkthrough, a YouTube video showing a text game, I presume, that Jim wrote. Looks like it's maybe an adventure game. And he goes through it. Looks like the video is about 15 minutes long, I'd say. As always, Jim's always producing some interesting things.
Yep, never disappoints.
The next news item is I built my own graphics card by JDH at YouTube. This is a video of someone who built their own graphics card. This is no an easy feat. Certainly interesting. Looks like he used an Arduino for it. Wow. Talking about going from scratch, right? This is pretty interesting.
It's pretty cool. It reminds me of what you once said, John. It's all about timers.
Definitely true. Cool project either way. It was funny. I mean, it is funny at some level. Complicated as it is, it's also pretty simple as long as you get the timers right. Not just making them work, but picking the right numbers.
It is cool. Even if it's primitive, but it is cool.
Yeah, and certainly a basis for learning and expanding.
Yes.
The next news item is Atari 64. Commodore 64 Basic and kernel running on Atari 1200 XL by 8-Bit Show Intel at YouTube. I saw this, and this is pretty interesting. There was some discussion on this in one of the online groups I saw. So imagine this is what he did. He basically took the Commodore 64 Basic and kernel and put it running on an Atari 1200 XL. Now, this is 6502 to 6502, right? So this is the same processor, but the hardware is different. So I'm sure there had to be some adaptation. I guess I was thinking about this. This would it would kind of be the equivalent of taking Dragon Basic and bringing it over to the CoCo, but this is probably even more complex than that because the hardware is a bit more different than the CoCo and the Dragon are. Wouldn't you say, guys?
Oh, sure. I mean, hopefully the Dragon would be pretty simple, but as a comparative project, I mean, but yeah, it's a cool idea. Basically porting, the operating system such as it is. Like I said, it's different hardware, but kind of if you stick to the rules, the programs will run. If your programs go off and start poking in the hardware that's not there, it's not going to do the same thing. And I think it kind of demonstrates some of that in the video, but yeah, it's a cool project.
Definitely interesting. It's certainly an amalgamation of technology, right? Sort of like the Liberate 09, but in a different way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, cool to see all the Atari, all the Commodore graphics on the Atari.
that is cool. The next news item is Apple Corn. Is a ProDOS application for the Apple IIe Enhanced, which provides an environment for Acorn BBC microcomputer language ROMs to run by Bobby Weber Manners. This is actually very similar to the article we just talked about. It's slightly different, but similar. I keep wanting to call this candy corn instead of apple corn, but anyway. So this is a GitHub page where he has an environment that runs on an Apple IIe. I guess provides an environment for Acorn's BBC microcomputer language ROMs. So, wow. Again, mixing and matching in ways that people probably haven't thought about to create something totally new.
Yeah, there's a French machine that's a 6809 based. This would be kind of like if we took that machine and got its basic running on the CoCo or vice versa. Which might be a cool project. Anyway, it's kind of funny that both of those projects kind of surfaced around the same time. This just shows you how many 6502 machines are out there, I guess.
Yeah.
It's amazing. We got one from Jenny List at Hackaday. Multics gets a new release 52 years after launch. That's pretty cool. This looks like a precursor to Unix.
Yes.
Multics was developed in 1960s. I didn't know about this.
That's the old joke about Unix is Multics without balls.
Right.
So it's kind of Unix was developed with a lot of influence for the way Multics worked or whatever, but for smaller systems. Kind of funny nowadays, but not sure who's hacking away on Multics these days, but it's kind of funny that there'd be an update.
Yeah. For sure.
The wait is over.
Yep. All right, the next one is from Deborah Maxwell. It's posted in the Facebook group, CoCo Facebook group. Looks like a little program. I haven't ran this. I don't know if any of you have, but it's Meet an Alien and See What It Looks Like from 1984's Computer Space Games publication.
I didn't try it either, to be honest, but someone doing some type-ins and excited enough to post to the group about it, so
yeah.
Why not?
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, load it up and see.
For sure. All right, this next one is from Fabian Rodriguez. I hope to announce soon the hardware will be selling. What he's been trying to do is, I know he's reached out to me a few times working on a website here where he's going to sell stuff to Latin America. So he's going to get good prices, CoCo prices out there. That's what he's trying to aim for. Yeah, it looks like this is coming off the ground. It's getting to fruition here.
Yeah, that's
very cool. I'm sure they need hardware out there. So
very exciting.
Mm-hmm. This is kind of cool. Speaking of type-ins, it's from Mike Fay at Kotaku. The dev's game finally works after fixing a 40-year-old typo.
Pretty cool that they would have it around and be able to take a look at it again and fix it.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I remember typing in a lot of the Rainbow stuff, having to try to figure it out too. Sometimes there's typos in that. That's how I learned how to type, by doing all those typos, or type-ins, I mean.
Doing all those typos.
That's right. Yeah,
that too.
That's true. Yeah, typos will teach you a lot, that's for sure.
That too.
Definitely
well,
he was working on this, but he had to pause to create an update to Multics, and then he got back to doing this.
Had to get through the release cycle.
Oh, good stuff.
All right. Moving on, we've got another one from Mr. Jim Geary. This one's called, I think that's Sorcery or Sorcery by Rafi de Yegihan. I have no idea if that's pronounced right or close or not, but Rafi, if you're out there.
Rafi D.
Rafi D, exactly. It was published in December 1985 of Lord de Nature Individuelle. The generic basic listing, the IF database, I guess it's Interactive Fiction Database, that reports the ports are known to exist for the Matra Alice and the Thompson. Thompson was the one who made the 6809 computer. I was trying to think. Anyway, as well as my own, meaning Jim's own TRS-80 MC10 port. I know that a French retro hobbyist has also ported it to Applesoft Basic as inspiration for Harry Potter, ? And then he's got a link to his blog. So anyway, little adventure game, I guess, must be related to magic. If you got some time, want to try something on the MC10, I definitely think it'd be worth your time loading that up. Should be fun. So let's see, moving on. This thing can back up and emulate MFM/ST506 hard drives for your retro computers. This is on Adrian's Digital Basement on YouTube. So he talks about a card that is available. It's got a couple of card edge connectors, which should remind you of the back of a, as they call it, ST506 style, old, the old style hard drives like you used to have in a PC. It can emulate them, and I think the storage itself is provided by, I think it's an SD card. I can't quite make it out from the picture here, but anyway, if you have a need for that style of, I think they may have been used in black box hard drives. Also available, were used with the Burke the hard drive adapter. So if you got a Burke adapter for your CoCo that you're desperate to get working and don't have a hard drive, you might try plugging in one of these. I think that'd be cool. I'd love to see that, actually. If you guys if somebody wants to get that set up and
that would be cool.
Demo it, I'd love to see that. Calling Mr. Rietveld. All right. Okay, let's move on. So we've got one from Sogmaster here, Mr. John Kowalski. Here's a fun question. Can you use real colors to create artifact shades of gray on a composite monitor? Basically, he's using the NTSC 8-bit color mode on the CoCo 3. Only he's doing something a little unusual. I guess he's demonstrating his understanding of what's working or exploring the details of how it works. So he started with setting it up for 4 colors, and then he pieces those colors back together and uses them to actually create shades of gray. So instead of the basic 8-bit color mode is at least can be viewed in one sense as configuring for shades of gray, and then when you spit them out, they produce color. In this case, he's doing the configure them to produce color and piecing them back together in ways that result in shades of gray. Pretty neat trick. I'm not sure I've totally got my head around it. I think I sort of understand what he's doing, not clearly enough that I've tried to replicate it. But he does have some source code available on a screenshot, so you might want to try that, see what you can come up with. Pretty neat to see somebody experimenting with some of the graphics capabilities of the CoCo 3 in a totally different direction. Not totally different, I guess, but an unexpected direction. So nice to know there's still a few tricks in the old girl that we haven't quite sussed out, or some, I guess, John has.
Yeah. Pretty cool.
Pretty neat. So thanks for sharing, Sockmaster.
Every day, a color computer is abandoned or abused. They live in the dark recesses of garages, basements, storage sheds, barns, and attics, waiting for someone to help. Hi, I'm Helen Bleedingheart. Please say you'll be the answer for CoCo suffering the effects of extreme temperature, overexposure to ultraviolet light, and conditions unfit for electronics. These CoCos need your help. Please call 888-6883 or go online and join the Color Computer Preservation Society with a monthly gift right now. For just $18 a month, you can rescue CoCos from their abusive environments, provide repair of damaged parts, administer retro-bright treatments, and most of all, provide love. Call or sign up online in the next 30 minutes, and we'll send you a photo of a CoCo being lovingly reconditioned by the CCPS. And you'll receive this beautiful tote bag that declares, I saved a CoCo. Yours for your generous, perpetual monthly gift. This is your chance to say, I won't sit by while a CoCo is wasting away. Please, won't you call or go online right now?
Fred.
Yeah?
Remember when I wanted to run the business on our color computer?
Yeah.
And you said it was too hard to move back and forth through all those different programs.
Yeah.
And you said all the software would cost $1,000.
Yeah.
Well, you want to hear something?
No.
VIP Library integrates all the applications we need, and guess who sells it?
Tiny Tim.
No, SD Enterprises.
Swell.
All 6 VIP applications are combined onto one disk. VIP Database, VIP Writer, VIP Spell, VIP Calc, Terminal, and Disk Zap.
So
we can do mail merge, finances, correspondence, all with VIP Library.
Yeah?
Yeah, and it's not $1,000. It's just $169.95.
Wonderful.
Finally, we'll have time to go see a movie.
No.
VIP Library, the only integrated application suite your CoCo will ever need.
Okay, so moving on, we've got an article from John Bales at Wired, Wired magazine. is, can people still play the same games as they get older? So this is probably relevant to, a large portion of our audience, shall we say. A lot of us grew up playing twitchy arcade games, Pac-Man, Donkey Kong, Galaxian, whatever, Gyrus, blah, blah, blah. But, age comes on. Maybe the eyesight kind of fails a little bit, and maybe your reflexes and twitch response aren't quite as good as they used to be. So can you still play those games? Can you still do it? Thinking of some of those old guys in the arcade game record holder competitions that I've seen documentaries on. They're bound to, the world champion game players are bound to fight some of this. So just a little snippet from the article towards the end. As developers themselves age, perhaps they will consider the specific requirements of older players more, or interface designers will find ways to remove some of the cognitive boundaries. And then, quote, maybe we'll have some kind of glasses that let us control the game with our eyes. It'll be a lot simpler. So maybe in the future you'll still be able to play whatever games you're playing today. And so, you'll still be able to play Minecraft and Fortnite, just with your thoughts or whatever in the future. But
as if those are going to get better as you get older.
Yeah, but, probably too late for Pac-Man and Donkey Kong, but I guess you never know.
Hey, a Gamester will get you there.
No, that's true.
There you go.
Get a Gamester, you've already improved your gameplay. So, hey, Phil Collins is still kicking in concert, so.
Sure.
All right, this next one is from Ken Sheriff. To explain this, I'll need to explain how CRTs work. So this is how we know that we're old. He's basically talking about vector graphics. So to understand vector graphics, you would have to understand how CRT works. So that's where the title of this comes from. This is, as I recall, this is covering the Star Trek arcade game from 1982, which I remember that one. That's pretty cool, but it's just funny that he has to start off. This game had an unusual vector graphics and needed to come up with some or get it working again, and needed to create a high voltage board, I think, to get it going. That's cool to see that restored. The main thing I remember, to me, this was like the first vector graphics game that I played that was in color. Wasn't just monochrome.
Yep. The vector graphics games, they're kind of rare, part of which is because the monitor used in the Sega color graphics games was notorious for catching on fire.
Right.
A little bit dangerous, but this Ken Sheriff, he does a lot of write-ups where he decaps chips and actually, analyzes them like a CIA guy analyzing a Russian air base or something, and figures out how things are built and how they worked and whatever. It's pretty neat. It's kind of technical, pretty in-depth, and maybe a little harder to follow than usual since he decided to post it as a series of tweets, but still kind of neat. Pretty cool.
Yes, that was pretty cool. This next one is from Alan Huffman. Color Basics Secret Microsoft Easter Egg. This is covering the Microsoft Easter egg on the color computer. So embedded in the ROMs is the word Microsoft. So if you do a specific CLS, I think CLS 255, it'll clear the screen and display Microsoft. And Microsoft was famous for having these on other systems too, as I recall, buried in the Easter egg. So this is just a video kind of detailing that and talking about it and showing where it is in memory, etc.
He also goes into a little extra. They actually had originally put a Microsoft Easter egg in for Commodore 6502 version of BASIC, Microsoft BASIC, and then it's fairly apparent, or at least it's pretty good evidence, I would say, that when they created the 6809, the color basic courses that I mentioned earlier, you can go from 6502 to 6809 fairly straightforwardly. there's some places in the color basic ROMs, or if you're, have some 6809 expertise, you might think, well, why do they do it that way? They could have done it this other way, have been more efficient or whatever. And that by itself might lead you to believe essentially copy the 6502 version, but they actually copied some, junk data, shall we say, that is actually a slightly, shall we say, encrypted version of, or obfuscated version of the word Microsoft that's buried in there as if it's just junk data. But he writes a little program in the video that will decode it and show it to you. So it's kind of neat and a little piece of history that I think we may have mentioned it before because it was a write-up from someone who does disassemblies and such on the 6502 based Microsoft Basics. The knowledge has been out a while, but it was kind of cool to see him write the program and demonstrate it. So
yeah. Our next one is from Kieran Anscombe. XWAR CoCo 3 support. It won't burn your house down now. So he's added, if you're familiar with XWAR, the color computer emulator, Dragon emulator, he's adding CoCo 3 support, or working on that. So that's pretty cool. Yeah. I think he's still got some kinks to work out in it, but XWAR is what I use when I want to use an emulator. So I'm happy to see the CoCo 3 support come to it.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. Well, I like XROR. I use it quite a bit for CoCo 1 and 2 stuff. Probably will use it for CoCo 3 stuff some, as this matures or whatever. It's my big thing is it's good to see hopefully the community will view that as a user-friendly CoCo 3 emulator, since the community doesn't seem to like the user interfaces available for MES or MAME. At least if you're going to reject MAME, despite its pretty good accuracy, maybe you could go to another one that hopefully will have. If the CoCo 3 support in XROR is as good as the CoCo 1 and 2 support in XROR, then accuracy shouldn't be a problem. The way accuracy and correctness is sort of a problem with another CoCo 3 emulation option that's out there. Every time I talk about it, I kind of get scolded, so I'll just go no further than that.
Yeah, it also runs on run on Mac and Linux, which is a
very
big
good,
plus.
very important.
Right. So yeah, very 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 good. Good to see this. And our final story is from Tim Lindner, announcing Squanchy Basic for the color computer. This is basically kind of a rewrite of Basic, correct? Or is this?
Well, I think it's like a relink, and essentially he's relocated the code, and I'm not sure how much has actually changed in it, but I'm sure something had to change.
Yeah, and you worked a little bit or assisted with this, didn't you, Boise, or had some involvement?
Well, I had talked to Tim about the idea, and then he just went ahead and went off and implemented it, which is great. But yeah, I had this thought that if you could take if you wrote Extended Color Basic or even Disk Extended Color Basic all at the same time, I think you would end up with a more compact product, because if you recall, Color Basic was written, then the add-on was Extended Color Basic, which hooked into Color Basic, and then Disk Extended hooked into both. So this is a way of looking at it from a holistic, integrated way, and I think that's what Tim did. He just basically took out all the padding and fluff, and there's probably still even more optimization that could be done, I'm sure. But this is a start.
Yeah, it's very cool. I mean, looking at the page, I can see, he already prints out the free memory is already at, 55K. So
yep,
that's a big plus as well, having a lot more space just to hold your basic programs, that it's adapted to handle that. So.
Right. So if you can have more space for basic games now, assembly language games that use the ROM calls will break, because I believe that's all been moved around. But
right.
Sure. Yeah, to me it sounded similar to the Dragon 64. It has if you type exec when you first boot up the Dragon 64, it goes out. It starts out in Dragon 32 mode, but then it essentially loads a variation on the Dragon Basic that is, higher in memory. And so it sounds like it's essentially that basic idea. Maybe he squished things together as well, like Boise's saying. The squanchy thing apparently is some wordplay based on some adult-oriented cartoon that I don't watch. But
well, you should.
Anyway, a little pop culture reference there. Is that Rick and Morty or something?
Yeah, it's
like
Rick
that,
and Morty. Yeah, it's Rick and Morty. Great show. So I will also mention that both this and XRoar CoCo 3 support, Ron Klein has bundled into the Cocoa Pie project. So those are both easily available to you if you're a Cocoa Pie user.
Very cool. Well, I think that's the end of our news. So why don't we take another little break, and we'll be back with some feedback.
Expand your horizons. Take your CoCo beyond the limits of floppy diskettes. Connect to Delphi, your complete online business and personal resource. Enjoy special forums for owners of the Tandy Color Computer, including OS9 Online and Rainbow Online. Meet other color computer owners, order hardware and software, inquire about products, and download programs. And Delphi is affordable. No extra charges for TimeNet or Telenet. No monthly minimum. No premium for 1200 or 2400 BPS. And connection rates are as low as $7.20 per hour. Find out what your CoCo was really meant for. Delphi, the world's premier online information service.
This month in CoCo history.
Welcome to This Month in CoCo History, where we explore events in the life of our favorite home computer. I'm Boise Pete, and this month we go back 34 years to the September 1987 issue of the Rainbow magazine and the Vaporware threat. On pages 12 and 14 of the issue, we find Lonnie Falk's monthly column, Print Pound -2, with the tantalizing title, Rainbow Police Combat Vaporware. This kind of intro conjures up images of law enforcement, multicolored uniforms with batons fighting off a blanket of mist, but it's really a bit more mundane. Lonnie's editorial stems from letters received by readers who are having difficulties getting refunds or replacements from new software companies that have appeared or even reappeared since the release of the CoCo 3 approximately 1 year earlier. Vaporware, of course, is the announcement of a product without an actual deliverable, and usually ends up in the announcer's failure to deliver. The Received and Certified section of the magazine, as Lonnie points out, was created to combat vaporware and ensure that products that were advertised did indeed exist. However, some of these new companies appear to be using the section as a form of advertising. Then, when an influx of orders comes in, could not deliver due to logistics challenges or simply being overwhelmed. Lonnie's solution, outlined in the editorial, was to call out products received by first-time vendors in the Received and Certified section as such, in order to alert readers of the novelty of the company and its product. While it's not clear that the solution affected the desired changes, it certainly gave the Rainbow additional credibility in protecting its readers. Today, the Rainbow Police and the Received and Certified section no longer exist. Instead, word of mouth on social media and other communication networks have effectively shunted vaporware. Instead, copyware is a new and rising threat.
And that's this month in CoCo history.
You know what's going on again at Radio Shack? That's right, honey. It's Tandy's Sweet System Sale. You get a Tandy Color Computer 3 with a dual FD501 disk drive system and your choice of either a DMP105 printer or a DCM212 modem for just $599. Most folks' $599 deal is not a system, honey.
These Apple disk drives are just $5.99.
That's not a system. Radio Shack is the place for a full system. Tandy's Sweet System Sale. Come and get it while it lasts, because it will not last long.
Love that CoCo from Tandy.
All right, CoCo Cruisers, welcome back. Now it's time for a little feedback. The first one showed up to our feedback email kind of out of nowhere from Mr. Matt Massey. Says, "Cool, you guys inspired me to do some CoCo stuff. Please find a possible news item for your next show." And thanks, Matt. We did get the news item. Sorry, I'd already kind of written up the notes. They got distracted a few things. Maybe it'll make the next show. Sorry I didn't make this one, but we do appreciate the tips. Great to have the participation. Great to know we inspired you to do something. So all good to hear. Thanks for writing in, Matt. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Matt.
Next one comes from Mr. Darren Atkinson, obviously in response to the tech segment from last time. So he says, in regard to the floppy drive controller and the MPI for Dragon to get floppy images copied onto CoCo SDC, EIEIO. So he says the Dragon DOS data pump routines could be recoded so that they don't use the card interrupt. The routines could employ status polling rather than sync with the interrupt. It's tricky because polling the FCC status register will often prevent NMI from breaking out of the loop, but it's doable with some clever code. And so Darren's a pretty technical guy, and I'm sure he knows his stuff, and I'm glad that he's a listener, and glad that we inspired him to think about something a little bit. Pretty cool. So great to hear from you, Darren. Thanks for writing in. Okay, now we got one that's a little bit cheeky here from James Jones, also a reference to an earlier segment of poking a little fun, I hope, and I think. He says, James Jones, talking about our host discussion, says it's awfully tempting to say that many, if not most, advances to the state of the art in the community distort the hobby. So James poking a little fun at us earlier segment where we asked about does something distort the hobby or whatever. Anyway, some of the community didn't care for that question, but our host discussions are they're not meant to be safe spaces and comfort zones. They're meant to provoke a little thought and discussion, and maybe to toss a few things around and make people think. And hopefully that's what it's done. It certainly made James think enough to do and made a little reference in a poke at us. So,
well, that's just from people that are distorting the hobby.
Yeah, people distorting what was said, perhaps. But I guess that's their right too, right? Anyway, okay. Once again, thank you, James. Good to know you're still listening. Glad to hear from you.
Yeah.
All right, moving on. We got one. Hadn't had one from Robert Murphy in a while, but he seems to be back. Replying to the same segment. Says the state of the art of the community doesn't advance itself. It requires active participation and effort to learn, experiment, document, mentor, learn. You got to learn in there twice, okay? Learn, and learn is very important. So, sorry, just
it bears repeating, yeah.
Yeah, mentor, learn, and ultimately move things forward. But passive waiting is not being the agent of change. Certainly, it was well said, Robert. Glad to hear from you. Glad you enjoyed the discussion, and it's I think you certainly got a point. It's the point of the hobby. For many, and it depends. Everybody's point of the hobby seems to be different. And every time I try to speak for anyone but myself, we'll get another email. But you're certainly speaking. It's good to hear what you have to say, and glad that you were inspired to write in. So good to hear from you, Robert. Thank you. And then let's see, we've got one last one from Mr. L. Curtis Boyle, who's kind of the godfather of another CoCo-oriented show on the internet, which goes by the name of CoCo Talk. He says, I think my favorite part of the host discussion topic, quote, advancing the state of the art, was the difference of opinion and even the modification of opinion during the discussion itself. So I like this description of our discussion, which is sort of the point of the discussion, right, is to toss things around and see if you still think what you thought before you started the discussion, right? There ought to be some amount of opinion change, or at least in a healthy discussion there usually will be. Not always, but you never know. So it's good to hear from you, Curtis, and thanks for your analysis. Thanks for your response. There you go. Thank you for writing in. Good. All right. Well, I think that's enough feedback. Actually, several feedback items this month.
Yeah,
good to hear from the audience. So we're going to take another little break, and then we'll be back, probably with a host discussion and or whatever else we got. See you in a bit. Hang on.
CoCo Crew Podcast. The CoCo Crew Podcast.
Fort Knox. More than 5,000 tons of precious metal lie behind a 22-ton vault door. The walls are concrete-lined granite. There are armed guards, fences, tanks, and Apache helicopters to deter any unwanted entry. Stealing gold from Fort Knox is virtually impossible. But how do you protect? Toilet paper? It's Color Outhouse, an outrageous game for the Tandy color computer. Thieves are sneaking into your outhouse to steal toilet paper. You must protect your outhouse from above in your very own flying saucer. Keeping these tissue bandits at bay is only part of the problem. The sky is filled with other deadly unfriendlies. Do you have the skill to keep your roles intact? Color Outhouse. Distributed by Computer Shack. 32K required.
All right, welcome back, CoCo Cruisers. Now it's time for your favorite part of the show and ours. We're going to just toss around the topic among the hosts. This month, the topic is about developer kits, meaning sometimes in the community, people have something that they've worked on or developed, not really a full product, but maybe it could be something that helps you do a project or a product or otherwise build upon it. And might be a piece of hardware, maybe a kit, might even be software. We talked about a news item this month from, it's what Paul Thayer has a library of routines for the CoCo 3, which would kind of fit as like a developer kit for the CoCo 3. So I guess the point is when you call it a developer kit, it kind of implies it's not a finished product. And so then the question, the initial question or point of discussion here is how much help, quote unquote help, should you need or expect from the vendor of your developer kit? So if somebody makes something available and says, well, this is a developer kit, you get it, and instead of having a nice 20-page document or whatever, you get 3 sentences and a good luck. Would you be mad about that? Or does calling it a developer kit put the onus on you to actually have to do something with it and figure out some things on your own? I think probably it does, but how much? Is it thanks for the cash and good luck, or slap you on the butt and say, okay, get out of my go do something, or or what? Is there different support? Is there different SLA, to use a kind of an industry term, when you call it a developer kit versus a product? And I would include, say, for example, the PCB and parts kits for the Gamester cartridge that several people have bought from me. I would consider that a developer kit. Haven't had much pushback or questions or whatever about that. Some people seem to want a lot of hand-holding, but not that many. But I'm sure some people would prefer more. I don't know. I guess I'm just tossing it out there. What do you guys think?
Well, I would think with a developer kit, you would have some knowledge, of whatever that kit is that you're buying, you're getting into, because that's not a finished product, right?
Right.
So, if it's a hardware kit, I'd hope you have skills to work with that, at least the basics with soldering and that sort of thing, and the same with programming. As for hand-holding, I would say no. I mean, you want to have some knowledge and, get you on your way, but that's the whole point of it, at least for my take.
Yeah, that's the definition of developer. Is you're developing whatever you're going to develop with it. You're just being provided the bones. It's like buying an unfinished house, or maybe a car frame. It's full of possibilities, and it's a starting point. But you've got to fill in the gaps. As far as how much help someone needs, well, that's going to depend on the individual. Of course, someone who wants to become a developer may have a lot more questions and things. I think it's better to answer how much should they expect from the vendor. Well, especially in our market, right? A small market for the color computer, it's going to be best effort. Nobody's making money from supporting developers, right? So it just depends on your time and your patience and what kind of questions are. You may not have as much patience with someone who's a complete beginner and wants to know, well, what's an SN76,
right,
chip.
Right.
So you got to expect that if you're going to work on something, you have to be able to, Google a few things and read up on your own, so you can ask some intelligent questions from the vendor, or at least I would think that would be the courtesy, whether it's hardware or software.
Right.
Yeah. Well, and you have to keep in mind, like you said, considering the market, somebody's made something available to you, and the prices. You're not going to get a price that actually makes that actually makes economic sense. And so there's a certain amount of labor of love. If somebody makes something available, it's because they'd like to see a product use whatever they've developed. But it's essentially anything you sell is going to be essentially at a loss. It may be a loss. It may not be a total loss per se, but it'll probably be a loss if you factor in the time of much labor. If you have to do a lot of, I don't know, pushback and hand holding or whatever. But and in case anybody thinks when I'm somehow saying just take what you be thankful for what you get or whatever. I'm looking in the Google Drive directory I've got for the Gamester cartridge. So just as a sample, I mean, if you do get a Gamester cartridge developer kit, you get access to, you get the schematics, which can be downloaded in PDF if you want. You get mechanical drawings, so if you want to design a case around the board, you've got it. You got a bill of materials with links for samples off of eBay for the parts if you have trouble finding them. Not that eBay is necessarily the best deal for the parts, but at least it's a pointer. You get, we've got a couple of documents I've written building and using the CoCo Gamester cartridge. And then we've got one programming the Gamester cartridge. Got some sample assembly code for a playback tool. Got some sample basic programs for toying with it and testing the card. We've even got a spreadsheet that you can use to figure out the frequency value or the register values for programming in different frequencies. So I mean, it's a developer kit, but part of the kit is the information that goes along with it. It's not a perfect bound and published manual to put on your shelf, but there is information there. And so I would expect if you're offering a developer kit that you'd offer people enough information to actually make use of it. But like you say, if somebody shows up with questions and so, okay, what do I do with it now? It's one thing to show up and say, well, I'd like to play two tones at once. How do I do that? Well, that's not unreasonable, right? But if it's, what do I do now? It's like, well, what did you get the card for? So, and you get some of that, but, most people are more considerate than that, but, you get some, and I'm sure I've seen interactions on Facebook with other people that have offered, stuff that, whether it's under developer terms or not, has been sort of in the latter category of, okay, I got it, now what do I do with it? So, I don't know.
I think there are examples, too, where people have come come up with ideas or did something or created some piece of software, and they're like, you know what, I don't have time to work on this, but I'm just going to release it. If someone can benefit from it, here, go to town. So, I guess it depends on.
Yeah.
And when things are released that way, we get pieces of code like that often. Then it's up to you to figure it out, or for the community to figure it out. So, and I think by and large,
right.
I think most people that release developer stuff are very willing to answer questions, as they can, of course, within reason.
Yeah. Well, given my real life background or whatever, what you just described there with the source is kind of I don't know if anybody else calls it this, but I kind of think of that as the open source pump and dump.
Yeah.
It's like, here, I've got some code, and here, you can have it if you want it, but don't call me. Which can be cool, and if you can figure it out and make use of it, that's great. But then sometimes it's sort of like, well, thanks for nothing. I mean, I can sort of see that point of it. If somebody lured you in and said, here, this is all you need for doing this or that, then, but we'll leave out the part where, you also need a PhD and 40 hours a week of labor. That would seem like you've been tricked, I guess. But I don't know. I think I heard Boise rumbling there. What do you got to say, Boise?
If you're putting together something that you intend to call a developer kit, be upfront and forward about how you intend to support it or not, and set the expectations. That's what I would do. Put some thought into it, of course. Don't just drop it, like you said, pump and dump, but get it to a certain level of polish. The old saying, the last 10% of the work, the last 10% of something is 90% of the work. And sometimes we just don't want to put in that extra effort to get it to 100%. And I think developer kits by their very nature are 70 to 80% type of things, if even that. So if you put your expectations out there and say, this is what I'm willing to do, I'll answer a couple of questions, or I won't answer any questions, or I'll give everybody my time, because everybody values their time differently. Just be upfront about it, and everybody should obviously respect it.
Sure, that makes sense. Oh, yeah, I guess I had a second question to go with. I don't know if there's any legs to this now, but the second part of the question was, is there any difference between a hardware kit and a software kit? Does that change your expectation in any way? Do you have a different set of expectations when somebody hands you a PCB and some chips and says, enjoy the smell of solder, versus somebody that sends you a URL for a GitHub project? Does that change your mindset any? I guess maybe. It probably depends on the person.
Yeah, I would say it probably doesn't. I mean, I think Boise's correct. The key is setting the expectation. You, as releasing it, set the expectations. So it can be different project by project, and it might be different for hardware versus software. But it's the same kind of things you're dealing with. And it's the same thing. Like, for example, if you got a software, if you put it on GitHub and someone asks you, well, how do you use Git?
Well, it's certainly and that would be a problem. Although, I mean, there are people who haven't used Git that just want to know how to download it. So that might not be might not be the dumbest thing to ask. but once you've downloaded it, you say, now how do I write a function in C or something like that? It's like, well, maybe you need to educate yourself a little more.
Yeah, that's my point. I mean, there's tons of tutorials out there on Git, so don't look for the kit developer to tell you how to use those kinds of tools, or the same with the hardware.
Sure.
I mean, within reason, I mean, they may ask you about, like, well, I don't understand which way this chip goes in the socket or something. That's a pretty easy question to answer. But so there are no stupid questions, just stupid people.
Stupid people with questions. Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess, so there you go. There's another kind of transaction or interaction that occurs in a community like ours. You can have some people who have produced something that's not really a full kit or not really a full product, but maybe there's enough there that it kind of feels like a product to some people. Make sure if that's you and you're offering it, then make sure you gotta let people know that I'm happy to sell you this at close to cost or whatever, but I'm not going to answer any phone calls. But I do think maybe there should be an expectation that I'm not going to call you anyway, but maybe you can answer an email once in a while. It would be as the buyer side of that. Anything else, Neil?
No, I think we got this one. Good discussion.
Okay.
Yeah, the only thing I would add to it, I actually
Sure.
just thinking about it now, is I've read countless books and articles back in the day on game developers, in the 80s, and just basically how they were handed with nothing. So you talk about a lack of tools, from a dev kit. It's just amazing they were able to pull off what they did.
Yeah.
Mind you, they were getting paid pretty well, so a little different story. But some of them, yeah. But it's kind of cool,
Well, like I say, it's just another part of the community, part of the interaction. Maybe it's good to talk about these things just in case people think that we're all, we're not all big, rich mega corporations like Cloud9 with tons of money. Some of us are just normal people. Sorry, Mark.
Standing for Cloud9.
Oh, Lord. All right. Well, we beat it to death?
We have.
I think so.
It's over.
All right. Well, thank you for listening. We'll be taking a little break, and we'll be back with, whatever's left of the rest of the show.
Whoa!
What do you want, mister?
I'm looking for gold.
Shoot, mister, we ain't got no gold around these here parts. But you can look all you want.
We got plenty of lead and tin, though.
Who are you? What you got there, stranger?
It's the new J&M Systems JFD CoCo Disk Controller. It sets a new standard in performance and quality. Its built-in digital phase lock loop data separator means no need for adjustments, ever. And the card contacts, pure gold. Woo-hoo! Best of all, the JFD CoCo is plug compatible with the original CoCo and the new CoCo 2.
How much, stranger?
Just $139.
Wait, where can I get one?
From J&M Systems, Albuquerque, New Mexico.
For versatile, powerful word processing on the CoCo 3, look no further than WordPower 3. Written in 100% machine language, no other word processor offers the speed, power, or flexibility of WordPower 3. Editing is effortless with WordPower 3. Access the help screen anytime. Features include split-screen editing, mail merge, on-screen 2-column print, spell checker, punctuation checker, and a built-in 4-function calculator accessible while you edit. Printing is a breeze with WordPower 3's built-in print spooler. No more waiting on your printer. Print a large job while you work on another. WordPower 3 provides for up to 72K of text on a 128K system and over 450K of text on a 512K system. That's more text than any other CoCo 3 word processor. WordPower includes a quick reference card and full instruction manual for just $79.95. Step up to the power and versatility of professional CoCo 3 word processing software. Step up to WordPower 3 from Microcom Software.
Welcome, CoCo Cruisers. This is John Linville with this month's tech segment for the CoCo Crew Podcast. So this month we're going to talk a bit about adding commands to, particularly to RS-DOS. I think you'll find most other DOSes per se available for the CoCo are, essentially most of them are clones or variations of RS-DOS under the covers anyway. Anyway, it should work across, particularly across HDB-DOS and most of the others, probably ADOS and some others. And if for some reason you don't want to use a DOS, I think the basics will probably be the same for Extended Color Basic or even Color Basic. I'm not sure why you'd want to be doing that, but if you do, At least it'll be an overview there. You might have to do a little more research in the unraveled books or whatever. But here's a place to start. Color Basic is great for lots of stuff. There are some, imperfections, shall we say. The biggest one is performance, I guess. It's an interpreted language, so it's a little slower than it could be. Also, the problem with, Basic and basically any language is you're somewhat limited to, what's already been defined. What are you allowed to do? And this is not always 100% true. You can program, it's the point of a programming language is to do some stuff that wasn't already there, but you still kind of fenced in a little bit. So how do you normally get around that? Well, you switch over to the great escape clause is to go to assembly language. And assembly language is powerful. You essentially do anything the hardware is capable of. But, it's a little prickly. It's not necessarily, it's kind of user-friendly, but it's kind of picky about who it's friends with. So what's the answer there? Well, normally people find ways to kind of combine the basic with the assembly. And there are some things there. Basic can load and, then execute or exec an assembly language program. We've all done that many times. And in fact, there's something similar to that is the intended use case for the USR function. So you may see that where programs will read data statements and poke assembly language programs into memory, or sometimes they'll load them or C-load them, and then set up a USR, def user or whatever to point at their program. Maybe multiple spots in the program, then use those def user functions or those user functions in their basic program. You don't see that as much as you would think you would, I guess, but quite often by the time you get one piece of machine code poked in, they just, just exec it and that's it. But so it's possible you can get assembly language programs into your basic stuff, and then you can use basic almost like a scripting language, and so take care of all this simple branching and looping and stuff, and then call the assembly language routines for the stuff that really needs to be fast or really needs to do something that's not otherwise provided for. And, if you code these things up properly, you can even, from basic, you can pass a parameter to those calls, or you can return results back from those calls and then use those results elsewhere in your basic program. So if you want a refresher or need a refresher on how that works, you might refer to the tech segment from CoCo Crew Podcast, episode 37. And as referenced in episode 37, there's also hard copy information that was available. Let's see, from Getting Started with Color Basic in Section 4, Part B. Also, in Getting Along with Extended Color Basic in Chapter 15. And then for those of us who started with the CoCo 3, there's the combined Getting Started with Extended Color Basic manual, which has essentially the same information in Chapter 34. So if you want to go and refer to those sources of information, I'll be happy to wait. Okay, now that you're back, if you're curious enough to check those things out, you know how to write assembly language code. You know how to write assembly language code, right? Anyway, you know how to do that, and then how to combine it with a basic program and kind of have the best of both worlds. So that's great, but sometimes it's a little nicer to have things kind of built in, ready to go for you. Have an actual command. So, and you get most of that result with, setting up your user functions. But that's a little extra boilerplate code or whatever, and it'd be nice if you didn't have to do it. So sometimes it's nicer if you somehow build in your assembly language to the basic interpreter. So let's think about that. Let's talk a little bit about how does basic map command input to its instruction sequences. So the basic interpreter basically has, I don't know, I guess you'd call it a lexer. That's what we'd call it in the Unix world. Basically, it takes your keyboard inputs, kind of turns them into a sequence of essentially tokens, the commands that you want to execute and the blocks of data that go with them. As it's doing this parsing, it uses a series of tables to look at that identify the various keywords and tokenizes them as part of the process. And so words like, for, FOR, or to, or exec, or whatever, they all have a defined token. So there's a set of tables that identify those commands, and then there's another set of tables that identify functions like the SGN and ABS and USR and a few others. Basically, the set of keywords is, so they identify keywords by the token value being greater than 128. So in one byte, that leaves a total of 128 possibilities, which they decided wasn't really enough. And so they essentially have two sets of tables, one that identifies, functions. Not really a big deal, other than the fact that you sort of need to account for that when you're adding your own stuff. And it also gives you the chance to add your own stuff as a function rather than as a command. So Color Basic has these sets of tables that identify the commands and the functions. As the lexer goes through and pulls in characters from the keyboard, it can check them against these tables and see when it finds a match. And then it has a corresponding set of tables divided between the commands and the functions still, but that has function pointers essentially in the same order, so that once you've counted off the fifth command, and then you count down to the fifth function pointer, and that's the code that corresponds to that command. And similar for functions, of course. Interestingly, each iteration of Color Basic has its own set of tables with the various commands and functions that are added. So Color Basic comes up and it has a set of tables, and then Extended Color Basic boots and it twiddles things around. It has its own set of tables on top. And then Disk Extended Color Basic comes around and does the same thing, and even remaps a few things, and it's got its own set of tables. Interestingly, the Disk Extended Color Basic actually leaves room for another table. So there's basically, a slot for each basic before it, and then a fourth empty slot. So extending Disk Extended Color Basic was actually explored by Colin Stearman in the Cooking with CoCo series, which ran in Rainbow Magazine from July of 84 through February of 85. So we're not exactly talking about cutting edge stuff here. We're not we're not extending the state of the art or whatever, but it's still kind of interesting. So you might want to check those out. The fundamentals of what we're going to talk about here are actually shown in listing 1 of part 3, which would be the September 84, and starting at the ADCOM, that's ADDCOM label. So if you want to look at code that is doing essentially what we're talking about, you'll have to read assembly language, of course, but that's where you can find it. So, but basically, what are we doing? So you start by, you need to build a table with any new command names, which is basically just an ASCII array, where the end of each command name needs to have, instead of being the ASCII value for that last letter, it needs to be that plus 128, or a hex 80. That's just the way the command parser uses to figure out where it is in the table and whether the commands start and end, or end in particular. Anyway, so you need to build the table with the command names. If you're just adding one, there's one name. If you're adding 4 or 5 commands, they all kind of get jumbled in there. And then you need to build another table that has execution addresses for each of those commands. And very particularly, those execution addresses need to be in the same order as the commands for parsing purposes. I guess let's just put a pin in that for a minute. If you're adding any functions as opposed to commands, so the functions, that's like little math functions that you put in BASIC with take the parentheses for parameters and return, a numeric value, that sort of thing. You do a similar set of building tables and execution addresses. So there's two sets of tables, one for commands, one for functions, whatever. So you need to find that unused, it's called a vector table in Color Basic. You need to find the one that's unused and it's just left hanging there by Disk Extended Color Basic. You need to add pointers to these tables that you've been building into that vector table. You also need to add counts for each of the basically the number of commands you're adding and the number of functions you're adding. And then there's one that's a little bit of an oddity. You'd think that would be enough, but for whatever reason, you need to add an extra function that does the actual lookup of the execution address based on the token. I don't understand why this is not just boilerplate. I didn't dig it out of the Color Basic version yet, but I saw a reference that the original Color Basic just did this for you, but Extended Color Basic and Disk Extended Color Basic don't. I don't know why they don't do this for you, but basically you need a little piece of code that accepts the token value and then maps that to the offset into the function, the execution table. Again, I don't know why they couldn't be boilerplate, and this certainly can be in that if you copy the code from that Colin Stearman article, that'll work just fine. Anyway, you need to do it or else you get a crash. Not too fun there. But why is it not boilerplate? I don't know. I guess we're asking the question 30 or 40 years too late. So anyway, once you've done all that, your new commands and any new functions, they're now part of BASIC. They're just as accessible as any other piece of BASIC that you might want to use. And that includes tokenization. So the BASIC interpreter will do that for you as you write programs. It'll take them in, translate the keywords into tokens and store them in memory as tokens and list them back out from the tokens with the proper word, whatever. If you didn't know that was happening, well, now you know. So, and of course, that'll survive saves and loads, which is okay, cool. Why do you care? Well, you might care because if somebody else is doing this trick and they've added their own sets of tokens, then your tokens probably won't match up, numerically speaking. So unless you've somehow coordinated your token numbering and also however you've added them, what table you're using, then so probably not a big concern, but if they're not coordinated, they'll probably conflict, and so that won't really work out very well. I'm not sure what programs or whatever are in the like the Color Computer Archive or whatever that add basic commands. I'm pretty sure there are some. I know some of the stuff for accessing real-time clocks, for example, adds at least a function for getting the date and time or whatever. So if you want to use all those things together, you might have some conflicts. You might have to code around it or figure it out. Your mileage may vary, I guess is what I'm getting at. Anyway, but once these things are hooked in, so like if you wrote a program for somebody to load in an exec that added commands, then anybody who wants to use the new commands could just do it, just like any other basic command. Once they've loaded them, probably the expectation or typical thing, like for that's Colin Stearman series from the Rainbow, that included instructions about burning replacement proms or EPROMs for your RS-DOS cart. And so if you did that, you would just have it in the ROM, and as soon as you boot up, they'd be available. So you wouldn't have to load them per se. They just would be there. Is that the best way to do it? I don't know. Maybe. It depends on exactly what you want to do. How are you going to use them? So that's my final little topic. Well, how do we use this? The real-time clock example was cited earlier. So if you do something and you deliver some new hardware, and maybe it's a real-time clock, maybe it's flash the lights in your house, or or whatever, make music on your disk drive, something like that. You could deliver those new commands with a piece of code that installs them, maybe in a disk image, maybe in a EEPROM image, something that extends HDB-DOS, whatever. You could do that. Maybe you have a little group of CoCo friends that like to do a particular hobby, something that might benefit from some computation somehow, which might, I'm thinking ham radio, amateur astronomy, I don't even know what else, but if there's something that you're all doing where you're all drawing Mandelbrot sets or something like that, if you all could agree on an implementation or whatever, you could distribute a set of commands, and then you could move on from there to sharing programs that do whatever your particular hobby is. So that'd be kind of cool. My last good idea here is that maybe you have new commands that for any kind of utility thing. So if you wanted to format disk images for CoCo SDC that are somehow different from what's already available, you have a new command that is, my format or whatever. So I don't know. Is that worthwhile or a good idea? It depends on what you want to do. So I don't know. You tell me. What would be a good set of commands to have? What do you want to do with this information? Was this entertaining and useful? Send us some feedback. I would love to hear that. Keep on CoCo and CoCo forever. Thanks for listening to this month's edition of the tech segment on the CoCo Crew Podcast. All right, take care.
New from ENG Systems Laboratories, the keyboard beeper cartridge. It plugs right into your color computer's expansion port, but still allows you to connect any other device using the inline transparent expansion port. The cartridge has an onboard speaker. Hear a beep as any key is pressed, significantly reducing typing errors. LED power indicators monitor the 5-volt, plus 12-volt, and minus 12-volt power supplies. Flip a switch to enable or disable a cartridge detect line. Power up into basic or a game pack. Best of all, it has an easily accessible reset switch right on the cartridge pack. No more feeling around blindly behind the computer trying to find the reset switch. All of these features and no modifications to your color computer are required. The keyboard beeper cartridge is just $59.95 plus postage and handling. Another great product from ENG Systems Laboratories, Springfield, Virginia.
Welcome back to Neil's Corner on episode 76 of the CoCo Crew Podcast. This month, I've got something different. I'll be talking about hardware for a change. I finally found a CoCo 2 with a Revision B motherboard to try out Tim Holleran's USB power mod. Tim had sent me one to try out and beta test. With this mod, your CoCo 2 can run entirely off of USB DC power. You can use a smartphone USB power block. The kit Tim sent me comes with two options. The tryout version, no modding necessary, and a permanent installation method which requires some modifications to your CoCo. With the tryout version, Tim has included a USB tryout cable that has clips on the other end, and you clip onto the motherboard in the specified locations mentioned in his instructions. However, with the tryout setup, there are several limitations, such as the power switch does not work, only the reset does, and if you want to turn your CoCo on and off, you have to physically unplug the USB connection. The serial port, Bitbanger, also doesn't work, so you'd be out of luck if you want to use DriveWire. Last but not least, the cassette port does not input, only output works, so you can't C-load them any programs. Now, all of these limitations are solved by doing the permanent mod. To install the permanent mod on your Revision B CoCo 2, you first need to remove the original power transformer. Next, the hardest part, you need to remove the Q1 transistor. I would think this is the toughest part of the modification, because it requires you to desolder the transistor. If you want to go all out, you can also drill a small hole in the back of the CoCo for the 1/8 power jack. If you don't want to, you can leave the wire hang out where the AC power cord once was. I prefer the jack method because it's cleaner and you now have a modular USB power cable solution. You can mount the small DC to DC step-up booster PCB where the transformer was. It'll fit in there nicely using one of the screw holes. This little board is how the Salt is powered. Attach the black grounding wire to pin E1 on the motherboard. After this, you will solder 5 other wire connections to different locations specified in Tim's instructions. I will make sure to include Tim's GitHub page with all this information in the show notes. This modification has a lot of advantages, such as your CoCo runs super cool. No more transformer and transistor heating things up inside the case. One of the annoyances with CoCo power supplies is that the transformer is always on, even when you power off your CoCo. You will notice a bit of heat on the top left-hand side. Without the transformer, the overall weight is a lot lighter. You can leave your CoCo plugged in as the power switch works and cuts all use of DC power. With the case mod, no more dangling power cable. You can unplug it when not in use. This makes it extra handy if you travel and go to shows with it. Last but not least, using a good quality USB power block, your CoCo will receive better power than the original aging power supply in it. Most quality USB power blocks deliver 5 volts DC at 2.4 amps, but the CoCo only draws 1 amp or less. One last thing I'd like to note is the permanent mod is technically reversible. If you go slow and properly remove the transistor, you could solder it back in and reinstall the power transformer. Worst case, you could find a replacement transistor if you ruined it by accident. Well, there you have it. A new way to power your CoCo 2 Revision B motherboard. I'm not entirely sure if Tim will be releasing these kits for sale and are making them available for different versions of CoCo 2s. I do know he's recently got a CoCo 3 version working. I'm sure in the near future we will know more as he will be giving a seminar at Tandy Assembly in a week. And do I ever wish I could make it there this year? Unfortunately, due to the Canadian border still being closed, I cannot make it there. Thank goodness the seminars will be recorded and put on our Tandy Assembly channel. We will stay tuned for what Tim will be releasing next with his USB CoCo Power mod. Thank you and great work, Tim. Until next month, happy CoCoing and retro forever.
Dino Wars. 65 million years ago, giant carnivorous beasts roamed the earth, fighting for territorial dominance. The only rule? Survive. Each player controls a rampaging dinosaur. If you aren't quick, you'll find yourself ruthlessly attacked by your opponent. Develop your maneuvering skills. Then declare an all-out Dino War on your opponent. Dino Wars requires a TRS-80 color computer with 2 joysticks. 16K of memory recommended. From Radio Shack.
Well, just like that, we'll have to draw this one to a close. You have reached the end of episode 76 on the CoCo Crew Podcast. As usual, I'd like to thank our host, John Linville, for procuring all the news articles each month and providing us with informative tech segments. Mike Rowan for editing the podcast and creating those fun commercials. Boise Pete, our CoCo historian. He remembers it, so you don't have to. Last but not least, a huge thanks to all of you who listen and support us each month. Thank you for your feedback. We certainly got a lot this past month, and we really do like hearing from you. Until next month, happy CoCoing and retro computing forever.
It's a blast from the past.
Please listen carefully.
CoCo. 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 CoCo.
Dance like there's no tomorrow.
What is this crazy rock and roll music anyway? It's a blast from the past.
Dance, dance, dance.